We're looking back at 25 years of music programs and retracing the steps of an international craze known as La Salsa. Saludos, I'm Miguel Perez. When Images Imágenes began 25 years ago, many of the shows featured a studio audience, and this gave us a good reading on the kind of programs our community enjoys. For example, here are a few of the folkloric music groups that have appeared on Images Imágenes.
Los amantes amanecen con el lucero del alba.
While the folkloric music groups always generated a lot of excitement, it was the pulsating rhythms of La Salsa, performed by big Latin music bands, that captured the most audience response. Here are some of the outstanding orchestras that have appeared on Images Imágenes.
Aquí se enciende la candela, aquí se baila como quiera. Aquí se enciende la candela, aquí se baila como quiera.
Ay, cosita linda, mamá, noche, noche soñé contigo, soñaba que me besabas.
Cócala, que ella baila. Cócala, que se hace. Cócala, que ella baila.
Oye, qué rico suena, las estrellas de París.
Without question, some of the best Latin music bands in history have appeared on Images Imágenes. But why is there a worldwide craze with Latin music? To answer that question and many others, we have three guests in the studio and one on the telephone. Reynaldo Jorge is one of the most respected and admired trombone players in Latin music history. Alfredo Alvarado is the founder and publisher of New York Latino magazine, considered the Bible of Latin music. And Chico Alvarez is a radio DJ, band leader, and commentator on the world of Latin music. And on the telephone from North Bergen is Latin music legend band leader Johnny Pacheco. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure it's a real pleasure having all of you here. And I'd just like to, first of all, make sure that Johnny's on the phone. Do you hear me, Johnny?
Yes, I hear you clearly.
It's a real pleasure having you on the program as well, sir. Why is there's such a craze all over the world with Latin music? Let's just start with that. That's the question that started the program. You're the magazine publisher. Tell me.
At me, Miguel. Well, I think the obvious reason is the danceability. You know, people have always loved to dance, and certainly when you're dancing in Latin music, there's two couples, they're touching each other, so it's the sensuality involved, and they're dancing to some great music. So that's nothing new that people are enjoying the dance. I think that what's happening now is that because of the technology and the communication, you know, the world is getting smaller, so to speak, and we have Mr. Johnny Pacheco on the telephone, and I'm sure he could tell you about the importance of the Fanny All-Stars and going around the world and helping to internationalize the music.
Johnny, that sounds like a good question for you. You've seen this with your own eyes, the reception you get all over the world when you travel, right?
Yes, well, the danceability, as you said, is one of the most important things. But to me, I think this music will wake up the dead. The rhythm alone is the most exciting music in the world.
But when you travel all over the world, in the beginning, when salsa was just growing in the 70s, I guess, were you yourself impressed to see all over the world that when you go to Japan and Japanese people are dancing salsa and listening to salsa music? Was that surprising to you?
Well, at the beginning, there were horrible dancing.
Yeah.
But now everything has improved as time goes on. The dancing is getting better, and we're getting more fans. There are more people attending the concerts.
And they're also buying more records.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. Reynaldo, you've seen the same thing, right? Traveling with the Fanny All-Stars. Tell me what the experience is, the reception you get from people all over the world.
It's great. To see all people from different cultures and different countries that really admire you for what you do and for your playing and for the music.
Mm-hmm. Chico, how do you feel about this popularity of salsa?
I think it's great. I think it helps the music. It helps musicians to get more work. It helps them to travel. Musicians today get to see places they never got to see, let's say, 25, 30 years ago.
Is there a lot more musicians too, because there's a lot more bands?
There's a lot more musicians, but there's also a lot more musicians from other countries, other cultures, embracing the music and beginning to play it and play it properly.
Well, we just saw La Luz, right? La Orquesta de la Luz from Japan.
Many years ago, there were bands in England, in Finland, in all parts of Europe that played what they call a bland type of Latin music, which is almost flavorless, insipid. Pacheco can tell you about that. He traveled, even before the Fania days, he traveled to Europe, he traveled to Africa, and he could tell you that they were just beginning to wet their feet back then in terms of how to execute the music properly. And after 25, 30 years, now we have Europeans playing just as good as Latinos and Africans playing music that wouldn't come naturally to them, since Africa is one of the roots of the music. But in the very early days, the Africans even themselves were stumbling on the music, and via all these wonderful tapes and movies and recordings that traveled around the world, they have started to play now more, I don't know if the word properly is the right word, but, you know, more technically correct. But it was in clave, and now in Alfredo mentioned the dancers too. The dancers, they're the backbone of the whole thing. This is essentially dance music, but there's also the part of the musicianship. You can sit there for an hour and watch musicians perform and watch them getting off on their instruments, really taking solos, 15-minute solos on piano, on trumpet, and just groove on the music without having to move your feet.
Well, that's because there's true instrumentation. I mean, you guys don't use computers like some bands do in a studio, and then when they go out and perform live, they can't do it. They can't reproduce what they did in the studio because they're using computers in the studio. You guys play the real thing. Johnny, go ahead.
I just came back from Paris, and one of the things that flabbergasted me was that when we were playing, they were singing coro. Now they're singing coro with the band, which to me is amazing. Mm-hmm. And that's a beautiful sign, because they're not only enjoying the music, but they're getting involved with it.
Mm-hmm. And Johnny, you know, there's groups in Finland too that are playing like real típico song. But they're singing in their language, in Finnish. They're singing in German.
Definitely.
They're singing in French.
Wow.
And they're están inspirando. They're doing the soneo in their language. It's really strange to listen to, but they have the feeling for it.
But the percussions are playing incredibly well.
Yeah.
But it's because people like yourselves insisted on the roots of Latin music when you came in 20, 30 years ago, when you guys pioneered came into the Latin music scene, brought salsa to where it is right now. You say that there were all these blends of Latin music traveling around the world that weren't the real thing. You guys insisted on the real thing.
They weren't authentic. You know, when I started, a lot of musicians couldn't read music. They didn't have the foggiest notion as to what, you know, how to build on an arrangement. They really didn't know. And thanks to teachers like Reynaldo here and many others who have gone to the school system and showed young kids how to read music, how to solfeo, and you know, theory and arranging, and they've come now to the point where, you know, they're ready to compete on a world stage with anybody musically. Whereas 25, 30 years ago, musicians were very much self-taught. They played by ear a lot, and a lot of them didn't know what they were playing, and they didn't really know the roots of it, the clave. And the teachers, we have to thank the teachers for that. You know, the teachers that got into the school system.
You're someone who's still teaching, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes. And also it helps a lot when you have, when you can see, it's not the same to listen to records, but when you can see the actual performers, you learn more quickly and you grasp, you know, the concept more readily.
You know, as a matter of fact,
it's not only dancing, but you're going to a concert. You're watching the band as well.
Miguel, at one point, I remember in the late 70s and 80s, there were musicians coming from Europe to study here Latin music, and they were also going to Cuba to study rhythms and whatnot. So they took the time to come in and learn. And
how do you guys feel about?
They did their homework.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the term salsa? There's a lot of talk about, you know, where it came from, what it means. What's your take on it in your magazine?
Well, I was in New York City when that term started to sprout, and even though people usually say, well, it was a marketing term, you know, to think that Jerry Masucci sat down and they had a marketing meeting to figure out a name for the word, I think I'm not sure if that's what happened. I think it just happened naturally in the street. It happened because the young people of that generation, especially in the Puerto Rican community, were people that were coming of age. And there was not only the music that was happening, but there were also other creative things that were happening. The New Yorican Poets Cafe, all those poets were starting to publish their first books. And you would go to concerts, and you'd have poets like Pedro Pietri, Sandra Maria Esteves. You'd have comedians like Rick Avilés and Conjunto Libre, Típica 73, all on the same bill. So you had music,
You're
you had
making
comedy,
me very nostalgic.
you had literature. So it was a blending. And naturally, you know, the Cuban music was definitely there. But I look at somebody like Willie Colon, and for me, Willie Colon epitomizes what salsa was about, because for me, it was bringing in a lot of different stuff. Bringing in Puerto Rican music from the countryside, Aguinaldo, bringing in coastal music, Bomba en Plena, bringing in Cuban music, bringing in Brazilian music.
Yeah, well, there was something else also that, may I say something?
Go right ahead.
Johnny, go ahead.
There was something else that when we started the Funny All-Stars, we had like Puerto Ricans, Dominican, Cubans. We had one Englishman, which was Barry Rogers. We had a Jew, which is... So we had like all different condiments. And when you make a salsa, you have all different condiments. And that's one of the reasons we call it salsa. But we've been playing Cuban music. It all came from Cuba.
So it was a very diverse mixture of people, and that's what where the term salsa came from?
Yeah. And the other thing is we cover all Latin music or all tropical music under one roof, not to confuse the public, because we were traveling all over Europe. But we never said that it wasn't Cuban.
Well, I think what Maestro Pacheco was saying, actually, that they took the base was Cuban, and they built up from there and added as we went along. Yeah, after 3 decades, there's so much in there now. You know, it's just like a conglomeration of all different types of music and cultures that have gone into the sauce. I have no problem with the word, as long as everybody knows it's Cuban music. It's sauce. It's a commercial term. It's like jazz. Jazz. The word jazz came about the same way.
Regardless of how commercially may be, it is the word that filled the Madison Square Garden with major concerts.
It was kind of like a rallying cry.
Yeah.
You know, it was a rallying cry. And during the 70s, when that term was used a lot, there was another magazine called Latin New York, which was published by Izzy Sanabria, so
Right.
he kind of held on to the word. So at that point, it really kind of helped galvanize, and being in television, you kind of need these little catchphrases in order to explain stuff.
Sure.
And like Johnny Pacheco was saying, to go around the world and breaking down all the different rhythms, they just kind of threw it under one pot.
And you mentioned Jerry Masucci. How instrumental was he to developing this Latin music industry that we have today?
Well, he had
He died in
a lot
1996,
of,
just last year.
He had all the great artists on that label. People like Willie Colon, Hector Lavoe, Ruben Blades, Ray Barreto. And together with Ralph Mercado, they took all those guys around the world and helped internationalize the music. So undoubtedly, he was an important person.
Well, one of the things is I was the
And Mr. Pacheco.
I was the partner of Fania Records, and one of the things that I wanted to do was like have it as a family, which thank God we accomplished. But one of the things that helped us a lot was when we did the Cheetah, the first concert with the Fania All Stars. Jerry had the vision of filming this. And that helped all the groups advance in quite a bit. But the idea of filming the concert was incredible.
There was something called Our Latin
Our
Thing.
Latin Thing.
That was the concert, right?
That movie played at a theater on 7th Avenue. I saw it when I was like 18 or 19. 52nd Street, 7th Avenue, the theater's still there. And like Johnny said, Jerry was visionary enough to understand that it would be a good idea to film that movie. And I think that's one of like the most definitive movies on Latin music that we have.
Wow, history being made. Johnny, you go way back. You've played with a lot of different musicians. Do you think the music is progressing? Are we making progress? Are we taking it to new dimensions?
Definitely, because the new, like the young generations, they adding new stuff that we didn't have it before, because of they were born here. Like some of the guys that grew up here, we have the influence of jazz and other kind of rhythms, and we've been injecting that into the salsa. So I think the arrangements are getting more interesting.
But there's also some new young blood coming in and displacing some of your old timers, right?
Right.
That's happening too, right? Tell me about that.
That's bound to happen.
That's a part of the process of life itself.
Yeah, but like Zainaldo and myself, we're like a bottle of wine. The older we get, the better we get.
Johnny, I want to mention the article that the interview you had in where was it? Descarga magazine.
Yes.
An excellent interview, and I got information that was very helpful to me. You really elucidated a lot about the early times when you were young, coming up in the music. It was an excellent article, and I liked it very much.
Well, thank you very much.
It was one of the best interviews I think anyone has ever done with you.
I feel so. I feel like it was very well done. It was done very well.
Johnny, I understand you were also in a new production, Ralph Mercado, a new feature movie, film about salsa?
Yeah, we started to do that like a documentary. But when I saw the finished product, I think it was it was done very well. It was like a Latin encyclopedia.
And what's happening with that? When is that going to be out?
It was out. It was in the theaters.
Oh, it was already out.
The only thing
released,
is that it should have been sold as a documentary, not as a movie,
Oh, I see.
because there was no plot there.
I see. So where are we going from here? Where do you see this new generation of Latin entertainers coming in, and where are they taking the music?
Well, I think things have changed considerably. I think Latin music now is a multi-billion-dollar industry nowadays. The profitability factor has increased incredibly. So,
And it's not just salsa; it's merengue as well.
it's merengue, it's pop, it's Tex-Mex. But I think unlike in the 60s or 70s, nowadays, when you make a record for one of these big companies, you really have to sell a lot of records, or else you won't be around very long. And that you won't have the opportunity to really work on your craft, as opposed to like in the 60s or 70s. Fania, they recorded a couple of records by some individuals that may not have sold a lot, but they stuck around and they played a lot. Nowadays, you're kind of in and out real fast, and I think.
Or you can start your own record company.
Or you can, or the technology is available
The thing
to
is,
start your
like,
own record company.
In those days, if you sold like 75,000, that was a big hit.
Exactly.
Nowadays, you got to sell at least $250,000.
Yeah, and I think that for younger people coming up, there's a lot of pressure to perform really well, really fast, and I'm not sure if that's a good idea for developing your art. So I think that some of us that have got the opportunity to see Mike Rivera or Hector Lavoe, I think we're very fortunate to see a real polished artist.
Mm-hmm. And what is the impact that music videos are having on the industry itself? Are they helping?
I'm not really too sure about the impact. It does expose the music to a broad audience.
We still haven't. We still don't have the kind of presence Latin videos don't. The way like MTV. We don't have that kind of presence.
Well, they don't. For one thing, they don't have the budgets that the American music labels have. They have big budgets.
They're making them better. Like We Are Latina is making much better videos. Sony's making better videos, but if you don't have a forum to play the videos, then what's the point of having the videos?
So shouldn't be someone like Raf Mercado be buying a cable station and making it a Spanish, a salsa MTV?
It could be anybody. It could be Raf Mercado. It could be Johnny Pacheco. It could be Reynaldo or yourself. But yes.
But there's a need for that.
There's definitely a need for somebody to have a cable station where Latino music is going to have a strong presence. Undoubtedly, that would help incredibly, definitely.
And it would.
I think right now the videos are mostly for propaganda, for
exactly.
for publicity.
Yeah, they play them in the clubs. They play them at a lot of cable shows. I know if you go to Puerto Rico, that's a different market, so you could turn on the TV and see a lot of the videos there. But in the metropolitan area of New York, we can definitely use a station for that.
And is New York still the capital of salsa? I hear a lot of Puerto Ricans complaining that they go back to Puerto Rico and everybody there is dancing merengue. Salsa is really the home base is New York, right?
It's a home base, but it's no longer the capital. I don't believe it's the capital. There are places in South America, Cali, Colombia, for example.
Colombia is very hot.
Where they play more salsa on a daily basis than we could hear here in 3 hours.
But one thing I like to say is that New York.
That's just one place. I mean, there's many places like that around the world.
Go ahead.
New York is la cuna de la salsa. It was born here.
The cradle of salsa.
La cuna.
You can still be here though and hear live music every day of the week. You could still go dancing every day of the week here in New York City. I mean, I don't think it's as exciting as it used to be.
Well, because in New York, you're used to them. You see these guys, and they're right next to you on the stage. If you go to any other city, they come in, they're in a big concert, and you pay a lot more money to see them. But in New York, we see them every day, and we're sort of like used to them.
You know something? Being that I travel so much, you figure out that when you see the people going to concerts, that the people in New York City are spoiled. Because we have all the bands here,
I've noticed something that's quite different now than the way it used to be. Is the bands that we used to have years ago drew a lot of people. Now the visiting orchestras from other countries are the ones that draw the big crowds, and the local bands don't seem to draw hardly any crowds at all.
Well, it's like Johnny was saying, that I think that people, we're kind of used to it. New Yorkers are jaded, so you have to have something with a little more pop. And that's where I think, Jerry Masucci and Raf Mercado, they were visionary in cooking up some schemes, so to speak, to get people interested, because you got to get people into the clubs, you got to get the people to buy the CDs. So I think that for the future, what we're going to need to have is, we're going to have like virtuosos in marketing, the same way we have virtuosos, on the musical level.
Miguel, if I may, a few minutes ago you asked the question about the progress. Are we progressing? Are we going? I think we're always progressing. We've been progressing for 200 years. The seeds of the music that we call la salsa come from Africa. They come from Spain. There's flamenco. There was the pure African music. It fused together in the 15th and 16th, 17th century, even to the 18th century, and then it became Caribbean music. It became Afro-Caribbean music, Afro-Hispanic music. It became Neo-African, Neo-Spanish. It fused. There is a book that Fernando Ortiz wrote where he talks about the transculturation process, where these two cultures from Spain and Africa, they clashed, and then they joined, they fused, and they created a new culture in the Caribbean. And this culture came to New York. So it's always progressing. You start off with the bolero, you go to the son, you go into the huaracha, you go into the danzón, you go, as every generation goes by, it just keeps progressing. And now we've gotten to a point where we I think a stale.
Well,
We've gotten
at
stale.
this-
There's no one really creating anything new right now.
Are we eventually gonna cross over into English language salsa?
We did that already.
We
But
tried
I know we tried
it
several times, but
many
is it gonna
times with
really
Columbia
take off?
Records. We tried it with Columbia Records many times.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I wrote a tune called Ella Fue, y ¿Qué pasa? And no pasó nada.
And Rubén Blades tried it even with a movie called Crossover Dreams, right?
Yeah.
In which a salsa singer tries to cross over to Latin
Well,
music.
Gloria
to
Estefan has
English
had
music.
great success.
Right, that's right.
We should not try to jam or cram our culture and our music and our ways down the throats of other groups. We should let them experience our culture, experience our music, our food, and if they either like it or they don't. If they like it, they'll continue listening to it. They'll go out and they'll help us promote it. But if they don't like it, they don't like it, and we just can't expect everyone to
can't
like
force it.
our thing, our Latin thing. It's ours, and if they like it, fine, and they can be part of the family. They can enjoy it just like anyone else. Am I right, baby?
I think the thing is that as long as people know that it's there for them to enjoy it, like I said before, any day of the week in New York City, you can go to a club and hear live music and dance.
There's always one night when there's a club that's hot that night. You gotta know which club is hot
so
what
it's
night.
there, you know, the records are there. You go to Tower Records, they're building record stores that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they have incredibly large Latin music sections. So the information is there for the people to
We
get.
have to say goodbye, but since Johnny wasn't here, we're gonna sign off by watching him in action. Johnny, thank you for being with us, and we're gonna watch a videotape of you and your band. And as we leave you, we remind you that next week we'll continue this discussion with a special tribute to 3 Latin music legends who are no longer with us: Héctor Lavoe, Charlie Palmieri, and Mario Bauzá. Don't miss it. Hasta entonces.
Up next, funny lady of folk music, Christine Lavin, the life and work of artist George Siegel, and the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival's new look. It's all next on State of the Arts.